because that's what's coming up the soonest. And then we're going to get into some MLB at the end. We're probably going to leave it about 1:45 or 1:45 Eastern time, I should say. I think that I need to make some last scrambling lineups. There was just some news that came just before we got on, so I was sort of scrambling with that. Cheats, how are you doing today? What are your thoughts on this NBA slate, and are you ready to get into it?
I'm doing good. I mean, it's one thing that we kind of talked about pre-show was because of the way that they're trying to jam all these games in within a short period of time. You're getting probably a decent amount of back-to-backs that you may not otherwise would have gotten during the course of regular season. So it just provides a little extra bit of nuance to projections, a little bit of extra nuance to the way you analyze things. But aside from that, it's a kind of a handy little slate, 6-7 games, and fortunately or unfortunately, you're not going to. I don't think you're going to need 400 points like you did yesterday to get it done.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lower scoring slate. Although I do think you're going to have a fair bit of points, and there's some good value. Is there anything overall, like maybe that an injury thing that you're waiting for? Because I know we were waiting on Brogdon, which we just found out he's in, and Oladipo's out. I don't think there's anything else that's going to be so significant that I don't have planned. But is there anything you're waiting on?
Yeah, but I will say that some of the things that you said to me over the last year or two, have resonated with me, especially with respect to the NBA. I mean, there's injuries that we know about, and you also have to be prepared for what we don't know about.
Yeah.
And especially considering the lack of information flow in general.
Mm-hmm.
They've been pretty good so far. You could just be prepared for anything. Now, fortunately, the sites have been nice enough, I guess, to allow late swap across both sites. But all that does, again, is it makes you more a slave to really staying on top of everything, which is, of course, also good because whoever works the hardest should be given a little bit of a bump. So it's a lot going on in a very short slate.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's how it is with the NBA, especially this time of year, because it's maybe not as much to play for certain teams, but at the same time, there also is a lot to play for other guys, and they seem to all have this attitude where it's almost like it's like an AAU type of thing. Like they just are all like they're all there, they all know each other. The benches are going crazy. It's like it's a weird vibe, but it's great, and I feel like the players are actually playing really, really well, and the offense seems to be outdueling the defense so far. So we'll see how that keeps up. Anyway, man, we'll go game by game. I'm going to share my screen in just a minute. We're going to jump to the games that we can show from BetQL today. BetQL's got some great bets, and I actually think I think betting the NBA is really, really valuable right now. I think there's a lot of edge, and I think that there's not just in DFS, but just in general. We've got basically all these unusual situations where you can kind of pick up on what's happening really, really quickly. And I guess we'll get into it. So go ahead.
I was going to say, just to share some things. I mean, we could talk a little more sports betting throughout, doing more of these shows. The NBA, especially with the back-to-backs. I mean, just to kind of share, when I used to bet sports, a lot more with, remember we met Big Al once with him and his brother. I mean, we would pick our NBA games, our best bets, 3 months in advance. I mean, we were always spot players. Like we would just find different situations where we knew a team would be sandwiched between two strong games, and we didn't really care too much about the spreads. We figured the spreads would be efficient, but they wouldn't take into account kind of the letdowns that the teams would have. And I'm just curious to see, BetQL, which is probably more of a data-driven, you know what I mean, like a data-driven model, to hear how how that kind of conflicts with or goes against or sometimes supports the way I would look at it.
Yeah, it's interesting. All right, well, let's jump into it with the first game of the day. We have Denver at Well, I got to stop with the at thing. Denver at OKC, and it's OKC -6. I think this is crazy. I'm sort of shocked that Denver's this big of an underdog, assuming that Jamal Murray does actually play. Even if he doesn't, I love Denver in this spot. So does BetQL. In fact, we've got it up here on the screen. We want to pull this up real quick. It says we've got it as a 4-star bet, but we've got it as a 5-star bet right here on the site that is given away, and I think it's an awesome bet right there. I also go ahead.
I was going to ask you. I saw that in the notes, and I was wondering, does that bet take into account whether Jamal, what does that presume? Does that presume Jamal Murray playing? Does the spread reflect Jamal Murray playing?
You have to factor it in the percentage odds that you think that he's playing, and then you factor in that odds into the game. So right now we're assuming he's playing, but I don't have the exact odds or know exactly what went into the algorithm to decide it. In fact, if I could do that, I would have a lot more money than I do right now. So it is interesting, but it's sort of like the same way Vegas makes their odds. You just have to try and factor it in yourself. I think especially without Schroeder today, this is a spot where you can definitely take Denver. I just don't think that OKC is a 6-point better team. Now I think that they are a better team, but I think these teams are pretty close. And I actually like Denver in this particular matchup. I think they match up pretty well. So without Schroeder, I'm going with Denver, and I definitely have some interest in DFS sheets. How about you?
Yeah, I tend to agree with just instinctively. It just seems that Denver should not be 6 points worse than Oklahoma City. Remember, it's a neutral site. Even though maybe Oklahoma City looks like a home team on the board. And I just can't imagine if this were, say, for example, at Oklahoma City in a real game, they'd be a 9-point favorite, and that's what it's kind of implying.
Yeah.
And likewise, if in fact if this game were being played at Denver, like for real, you're telling me that Oklahoma City would still be like a 2-point favorite. So again, for me, it just seems like such a big spread that I would just be probably nervous to even take the underdog because I figure they know something that I don't. But I agree with you. Just kind of just staring at the face of it, certainly looks like Denver shouldn't be a freaking 6-point underdog to almost anybody. You know what I mean? Like, Jokic is is back. He's lean. Hopefully he's completely healthy. And I know Jamal Murray is pretty bad, but I mean, Steven Adams, is a good defender, but I mean, Jokic, if he really wants to assert himself, he could do some damage over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be crazy high owned today, so I'm very interested in Jokic. I have to say, there's only 3 players I'm really planning on using from the Denver side, and mostly it's only going to be Jokic. He'll be the highest owned of the bunch. But I do like taking a shot and running back at Michael Porter Jr. I just think that there's upside for him, and I think that he's really played poorly, and I think there's upside for those 22 minutes that he's being projected at across the industry. I think you might see that increase. It wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't go that way and Millsap or Grant get some more of the run. They've got a lot of bodies, but I do think that he offers the upside, and I think he can play a little small forward as well. So you're going to see him play all over the place. I think he might have some upside on those minutes. So he's my next most interesting guy, and then Paul Millsap just behind him, who I think is just going to be completely overlooked. And if we can get that 30 minutes for Millsap, we're going to get a nice game from him. So I like those 3 bit. How about you?
Yeah, I would add. I don't have it up right now, but I played. I forced in actually just because I thought that I kind of wanted a 10% of him. Jeremy Grant on FanDuel.
FanDuel.
Yeah, I thought he was particularly cheap over there. I was just looking for anything to get off some of the chalk over there. And I am actually playing with DraftKings. I'm probably playing like 12 lineups or so, but I do have 2/3 of them with Michael Porter Jr. So, I think he always, he could certainly. This could be the game where Malone gives him 9 minutes. It's very possible. But if he lets him run and he gives him minutes, he's very active, and he certainly has some ceilings in him. So I have no problem taking a big shot with him. And Jokic, again, he's my other highest owned guy from this team.
Yeah, I really I just think he makes a lot of sense today. And I don't know that I don't prefer him to Embiid, but you can play them together, and I think it's a different type of build where you can go spend all the way up at center. I think it's kind of an interesting way to go. All right, how about the other side? Like, the Thunder is going to be the interesting side from a DFS perspective. So I think this is going to be important to get these kind of spots today, right? What would you say is your priority on the Thunder if you're going to take anybody? Or maybe you just leave it alone because you don't want to have interest. Because I have a ton of interest in 2 guys.
Right. So I a lot of these guys are projecting really well. And it's so funny. I just didn't get to them with the amount of lineups that I played. My favorite guy would be Shea. But you know who I kind of got a little bit of in a couple of lineups? A guy I really don't play too often, but because you liked him also when we first spoke, I wanted to throw him in there. I am playing a little Gallinari here at 5,600. He just kind of fits in my lineups with the other stuff I want to do. I've never been able to get the centers right. I've never been able to get when Steven Adams is going to get a full complement of minutes. And whenever I would play Nerlens Noel, that would be the day where he only got 10 minutes. So I've never really gotten those two too right. I'm not a Chris Paul guy. You have a lot more luck with him than I do. So for me, I mean, look, if you're going to play a bunch of lineups, I would say Shea is certainly a really, really good play. I just, for whatever reason, didn't get to him.
Yeah, I think Shea is one of the best plays in the slate, and I think Gallinari is one of the best plays in the slate. Without Schroeder, these guys' numbers both go way up, especially Gallinari does, which is surprising. He's now my favorite play at small forward on DraftKings. Yeah, at least I think he will be. We'll figure it out by the end of the show. So I love those two guys. I don't think I'm going to go to CP3 today. It's fine. I think I'd rather go with – I think I'm going to end up with more Ja Morant because I like that game environment, and he's a similar price. So Steven Adams I think is worth playing and taking a shot on, but I just don't find – like you said, I don't really find myself getting to him a bunch. But I would say that I'm going to probably start prioritizing him certainly over like a Jakob Poeltl, which I wasn't doing earlier. And that's something I'm going to make some changes on. So that's pretty much it for these guys. I mean, if you want to throw Dort in, he's going to play like 30 minutes, and he's 3.1 if you happen to need the price. But I don't think you need to do that on the slate.
That's interesting. I didn't consider him at all.
He plays a lot of minutes. He doesn't do a whole lot.
You know what? I don't. This is, and this, we could talk about more again DFS theory and stuff, but those types of guys are typically not the guys that I like to play. Because again, when you're playing guys in DFS, you want guys that have upside either with their usage rates or their minutes, right? Mm-hmm. And it's usually better if you can find kind of minutes upside from people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just taking out Michael Porter Jr. just for example. Like a guy like that, like if he is playing well, he could get those extra minutes. So he's got like a high, points per minute ceiling, so he could get there. Where you got these guys like the guy you just talked about, Dort, who else? Like Royce O'Neal maybe. I don't know. Just guys that play minutes but just don't do anything.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard for them to have like big ceiling upside because unless you're going to get the big usage rates upgrade, which doesn't really happen too often with these guys, there's very little minutes upgrade you can get.
Yeah, that's true. But there's always going to be a little more extra usage to go around just simply because you have a guy who's ball dominant not playing as much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
So you're going to get a little bit of both. We'll get on to the next game but I do think those are some interesting points. Pacers and Wizards, this is going to be another one of those you're going to have to get right if you want to make money on this slate, I think. All right, Sheets. It's an interesting game from like a straight betting perspective because the Wizards, the under is a 5-star bet on BetQL. And I can see that happening if you see a blowout coming, for sure. Without Oladipo, even with Brogdon back, it is the Wizards on the back-to-back. It's a little nerve-wracking. It's a weird situation. What are we doing here? And if the game was a little later and yet they played early yesterday, if they played the very first game and then they were the last game today, that would make more sense to me. But this is like 24 hours, so it does worry me a little bit, which does sort of suggest the under a little bit. But what are we doing from a straight betting and then a DFS perspective?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about what kind of team Washington is without Bradley Beal from a defensive perspective, Because I remember when they had Beal, I mean, they didn't stop anybody. I just wonder if Beal was one of the guys that actually played defense or what he was one of the.
Well, he's capable of being a spectacular defender, but he doesn't play defense much on this team.
Okay. But Oladipo out, no Sabonis out. I'm not so sure that the Pacers are going to be able to take advantage of the of the lack of defense as much as maybe other teams. Because as Brogdon, for example, I think Brogdon playing, and this is my first take on this, I think that negatively impacts the scoring of the game overall. I don't think Brogdon is the type to just push. I think he's very deliberate. I think that he gets the offense set up, and I actually feel that Brogdon playing, even though he scores points, I think that negatively impacts the total in this game. So I think that Brogdon playing actually does give support to the underplay here.
And I agree with that 100%. And I also think that it lends itself more to the blowout, obviously, with him playing. If there's a chance of a blowout. In a blowout, obviously the under is going to hit more often because you're going to have to score a lot more than the other team. I don't know how else to say it. All right. So let's get into some of the DFS plays in this game, though, for where we're at, because I'm struggling a little bit. Like Miles Turner, I think was going to be too high owned. Now I think it's going to come down a little bit. So I actually am kind of interested. I'm interested in having him like 30 to 40% of my lineups. I like him quite a bit. I'm just going to start with the Indiana side. And then Brogdon I like, but I don't love, and I feel like I'm supposed to. Aaron Holiday I still like as a tournament play, and I still like Justin Holiday, but the problem is they're going to be a little bit more owned than I want. So I don't mind if you want to take a shot and go back to TJ Warren. It's literally the absolute nut matchup. I'm not saying he's going to score 53 points, but even if he scores 25 points, he's going to get you there with that salary, and I think that's a really, really likely outcome. So I'm interested in those guys, and I'm interested in this as a game stack, at least a mini stack, with maybe you play one of Brogdon or Holiday and the other, and Justin Holiday and Turner, and then you run it back with some of the guys from the Washington side. It just worries me a little bit, this game, and I'm worried it could be like an ugly game.
Yeah, so I didn't play on DraftKings that much of Turner, maybe just kind of one lineup. I kind of went against my better judgment a little bit. I played more of a Bryant than I thought I was going to. I spent like 20 minutes in our last show explaining why you're not supposed to play guys like Thomas Bryant. You know what I mean? Coming off ceiling performances in back-to-back games. He had threes, he had all that, and yet I got to him anyway. So that's that. So I definitely am playing Thomas Bryant, and also I don't know if we were going to talk about the Washington side also, but the Washington side, you kind of sold me on the fact that Troy Brown's kind of tough to fade in this kind of new environment for them. I mean, he's going to be. Have to steal what you basically said like 20 minutes ago, but with McRae out or whatever, like Troy not on the team anymore, no Bradley Beal. Troy Brown is just going to be the guy that kind of runs the show here. Well, I mean, Ish Smith could, technically run the show, but when they look for scoring and stuff, I think Troy Brown's going to be a very, really strong option. So he's very, very tough to get away from. But I just want to keep on, keep trying to play Rui Hachimura. He's another guy I don't get right too often, but I have him in about a third of my lineups here on DraftKings, so he's fine. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty much all I had.
Yeah, I'm less interested in Ish than what the field is going to be, but I'm also a little bit less interested in Troy Brown now too.
Interesting.
But I still am going to have him. But I'm going to have him a lot more than the field. The field's not going to – people aren't going to play him much, which is interesting. They're going to play him on FanDuel and not on DraftKings very much. I'm worried about the back-to-back for all these guys, but – look, Ish played a majority of the minutes. I could see the minutes sort of going to Jerry and Grant, and not even him or Napier. I could see it getting just because of the back-to-back situation. So I'm a little less interested in that. Maybe in a game stack I'll use Ish, but I'm more interested in Troy Brown. He's my most owned, but I still, again, I'm a little bit less than I'm not like locking him in like I was talking about doing earlier. I've also become very into Danilo Gallinari, who's 400 more at the shooting at the small forward spot, which is basically, so I'm sort of deciding between them, or I'm playing them together a couple times. Thomas Bryant, I like a little bit less than Turner, but I'm okay with him. I think there is definitely a bust factor that could be play in here, like you mentioned earlier. But that's pretty much it for me for Washington. And I think if you want to play Brown, Ish, and Rui together, or one of those, or two of those with Bryant, or even all three of them with Bryant, if you count the game staying close, I just probably recommend you have to play at least two guys on the other side then, because you're betting on a really tight game.
Yeah, now if you don't like Thomas Bryant, I don't know how many minutes this guy played, but Moritz Wagner, I guess he comes off the bench, right?
Yeah, but I'm not touching it.
Okay.
All right, let's move over to the next one. This is just I don't know. This game makes me. I just have all this creepy feeling like this is going to be the game that hurts me, and I don't know. I don't feel as much conviction on it as other people do. Maybe I'll just end up staying a little bit more away from it. I will share my few of my lineups.
The Memphis game?
The what's it called game? The Pacers game. Really.
I thought you were starting to talk about how you're going to be shying away from the Memphis game.
No, that's not going to happen. Okay. I'm all over this game. I did on FanDuel when I did my settings today. I think I put one of each in every lineup from each side, and I'm going to have a lot of them. But I didn't do that on DraftKings. I do think that this is a weird spot because you're going to get really, considering it's a 5-game slate, really, really low ownership on all of these Pelicans. And I just think that I'm going to play a ton of Lonzo. Well, not a ton. I'll play 15 or 20% of Lonzo, which will be well over the field. I'll play 25 to 35% of Drew Holiday, which is going to be more than double the field. I'll play 35% of Brandon Ingram, which is going to be 3 times the field. these guys will be popping up in a lot of my lineups. I will have a couple JJ Redicks in there, but I'm a little bit more. It's between JJ Redick and the other one. The shooting guard for Indiana is a really tough decision. It's that Holiday, Justin Holiday, or Redick. And Justin Holiday's going to have all the ownership, but I feel like Redick's the tournament pivot that definitely has upside in those 22 minutes and could get hot. It might be in this game down the stretch. What do you think?
Well, I feel as though that if people are really going to be playing Holiday at the shooting guard and also Redick maybe at the shooting guard, is Jordan Clarkson in the later game really not going to be chalky after all that?
Nobody's playing. I don't know where you got the idea anybody's playing Drew Holiday. I don't think people are playing. Oh, Justin Holiday. I'm sorry. Yeah. He's also small forward eligible.
Oh, okay.
But I do think Jordan Clarkson is going to be far lower owned than what people thought when the day started.
So my views on this game is, first of all, I mean, I just feel as though the pace, the setup, just the environment, I mean, all of it is just really, really strong for John Morant. He's going to get assists. He's going to get steals. He's going to get blocks. Maybe he might make it 12 rebounds in this game. He's cheap. I think that this is a really, really good spot for him. And as we talked about earlier, even if he doesn't have the greatest scoring game in the world, I think he's got, enough of a floor with all of his peripheral stats where he can. I mean, I'm just really, really comfortable putting him in a decent amount of my lineups. Now, again, Lonzo's a good defender, and Drew's a good defender too. You know what I mean? So it's not like
he's really fast though.
What's that?
Play so fast it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so that's what I mean.
No rim protection too.
I'm not going to steal the thunder of the BetQL pick here, but we could talk about the power forwards here: Jaren Jackson, Brandon Clark. Brandon Clark was the kind of the superstar the other day. Oh, they both were, but Brandon Clark was what not as many people projected. And I think both of them are still in play, and Dylan Brooks remains in play. I think the Memphis side, like you said, the Memphis side seems easy, right? It's Morant and the two power forwards and Dylan Brooks. I will throw in, by the way, again, I was just kind of hunting for like something a little lower owned from this game, and I don't know why, but I put a couple lineups in with Kyle Anderson just for fun, just to see if I can shake things up a little bit. And on FanDuel,
by the way, that Jamal Murray is out tonight, which is going to change this. So. And
on FanDuel, I forced in all my models, all my runs or whatever, like kept giving me 0, no matter how many lineups I wanted. But I literally forced in 10% of Valanciunas. It was begging me not to do it, but I just wanted 10% of him. It's like one of those guys I always want 10% of him. So I threw him in. He's going to be like 0%. So I figured I would just kind of try it. And on the New Orleans side, it's rough. I will tell you that I did play just an exceedingly disgusting amount of Drew Holiday on FanDuel at the shooting guard position. I did get some Ingram also. The problem with Zion is he just, when he's in the game, like no one, Derek Favors can't do anything, right? He's out, and he just he's not going to play enough to get his own. So it's like he's like kind of annoying, and that's I guess why all these New Orleans guys are going to be unowned. But Ingram, I think, is probably the best play. JJ Redick, I don't know. The play kind of bothers me, and I can't really figure out why. He's certainly fine. He looks 3,700 on DraftKings. I mean, makes a lot of other things work. But I do have him in one lineup out of my 12. But I guess that's all I have.
Yeah, I agree with the Brandon Clark take, obviously, that's here that we have at BetQL. We're going to have to go a little bit quickly because I'm going to have to get to my lineup. I'm going to have to make some more edits than I thought I was going to have to because the Jamal Murray thing is somewhat relevant. I think it bumps way – but we'll just touch on that real quick. It bumps way up on Michael Porter Jr. for me, a little bit up on Millsap and up on Jokic. So all those guys get a little boost for me. And now that game is becoming more stackable without Schroeder. You can play.
Do you do anything with like Monty Morris and those guys or no?
He's $5K today. I'm not going to touch it.
Okay.
Too expensive, but I would consider it probably on FanDuel where he's probably cheaper, but I actually don't have that in front of me right now. I actually am going to have to edit my FanDuel because I think I even threw it. I scripted so much. I think I saw Jamal Murray ended up in like 1 or 2 or something by accident. It was going to probably take anyway. Hey, what's up, Eric? By the way, in chat. On the Memphis side, though, I think that was right where I left off. I actually like the obvious guys too, Ja and all those guys, and I do think Dylan Brooks is going to be really low owned. So taking that shot is probably where I'd go. But if you want one of Brandon Clark, Jaren Jackson, Ja, I don't mind if you want to take a wild shot on Jonas Valanciunas, but I don't think I'm going to do that.
No.
And I don't think I'm going to do that with D'Anthony Melton, although I believe he had a really good game earlier this year against the Pelicans. But I just think I'm going to leave that stuff alone, even though I like the game environment. All right, let's move on to the next one. Spurs and 76ers. We have the Sixers are -7. I'm not touching this game as a bet. The sharp money right now we've got from BetQL, 21% on the Spurs at +7, 59% public, 80%. I don't know of the money. It's not personally. I'm not going to bet this game. I just feel weird about it.
Oh,
but
it totally seems like a completely fair line. I can't even think about a lean one way or the other. I couldn't bet. I mean, like, you gave me 5%, I probably couldn't come up with one.
There's a part of me that how bad the Sixers look want to agree and take the Spurs, but I just think the Sixers are going to get it together a little bit more than that, and they're just a much more. I don't know. I'm just leaving it alone. All right, from a DFS perspective, what are we doing with this one, Sheets?
So this is what I came up with, by the way. I did come up with a little something. So I am playing Pirtle a little bit on DraftKings, not exceedingly amount, but I'm getting him in some lineups. I mean, they have nobody else. I mean, he just kind of, unless he fouls out or just whatever, he just kind of probably going to be forced to play the minutes, I think. So I'm definitely using him. I also talked myself into getting way too much of DeJounte Murray on FanDuel. The whole thing scares me. I mean, it really does. I mean, the game environment scares me. Having Embiid and rim protecting scares me. The whole thing scares me. Yet, I did go to him. I don't really have him on DraftKings though. For what I guess he's much cheaper. I don't know.
The same price as Brogdon, for example, feels a little safer, even though it's weird too.
But the guy I'm getting to, I almost wanted to force him in because again I was trying to find some lower owned guys. I think I got a little bit of DeMar DeRozan. I mean, I think that he's probably gonna go fall by the wayside a little bit, and so I'm just getting a little bit of him. And that's pretty much all I have on San Antonio.
Yeah, I sort of with you on that. I think he's kind of an interesting play. I don't find myself getting to him much, but I do think he's kind of interesting. There are a few lineups where he did sort of find his way in. And he's going to have some ownership. They're playing faster. He can score. I kind of like it a little bit. So, but I'm more into Murray and a little bit of White, but not much else. I'm really interested in Joel Embiid on the other side. I think he's going to destroy. I think him and Jokic are now very close at center. I like that pairing at center quite a bit now to get away from the other guys. And we've got some other value that we've talked about. So that's one way to go. I also really like Ben Simmons, but I don't find myself getting as much of him as I wanted. And I want to play Josh Richardson at 4.8. It feels like crazy.
Yeah, I threw a couple in with Josh Richardson. I couldn't avoid it.
I feel like he's going to have one of these 40 fantasy point games and be like 5% owned one of these days. And it's going to be like, what the hell are we thinking? He does that. He did that for me once and won me a big tournament this year. All right. So, yeah, it's pretty simple on this one. These later games are not as interesting for me for DFS, but we will get into the final game of the night, which is the Lakers and Jazz. The Lakers are -6. I'm curious to see what the BetQL people think. I'm going to pull up my notes. And let's see what we've got here. We've got LeBron and AD both projected under 50 DK points. Well, I have very little interest in both LeBron and AD, but I do have some interest in AD on FanDuel. So I think over there he makes some sense because you need those power forward spots. I liked him better than the 8K spend ups. So that's basically what I decided to do. But from a straight betting perspective, I'm not touching this game with a 10-foot pole. I don't like the Lakers. If anything, I would consider betting the Jazz, but they've looked horrible. And the Lakers, I thought I've looked pretty bad too, except for that, a couple good quarters against the Clippers. I don't know. From a DFS perspective, it's not going to be much for me. From a betting perspective, it's not going to be much. How about for you?
Yeah, so I actually I do have LeBron in one of my lineups on DraftKings. The other guy that I didn't quite get to, but I promise you that if I went up to like 20 lineups, I would get to him maybe, is Alex Caruso at 3,400. Mm-hmm. again, not somebody I'm going to play with minimum lineups, but I just from at that price, I was able to, I got him into some lineups once if I had more lineups to play. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I did in this game, I didn't play AD on DraftKings. I do have him just on FanDuel. It's kind of hard not to play him, sort of. But
yeah.
But on the Utah side, I like Clarkson. He's more expensive than he was. He's going to be less owned than he was because of that, and because there are other probably better, cheaper options. I think Mitchell is a really really good price. I hate playing him. Mm-hmm. I really do, and it's kind of hard. Not at 7K is really difficult, though. I know it's not the easiest matchup in the world, but 7K is 7K. One guy, two other pieces from Utah. Actually, I got to. Again, I was trying to just find some guy that might just do something at a low ownership, and I played a lineup or two with Joe Ingles just for the hell of it.
Yeah, his price is a little bit is a little gross, but
I know exactly.
but I like it. I played him the other day on FanDuel in the big one, and he was fine.
And the other thing about this is we talked
more on this game than I do. You have a lot more on this game than I do.
I know. You're all my thoughts. We talked about Rudy Gobert, and you were mentioning that on the one hand he's been looking like crap, yet on the other hand he's really really cheap.
Mm-hmm.
I did play him in one of my 10 lineups on DraftKings just to get myself some low own differences, and I did play him in like 5 to 10% of FanDuel, and I max entered that one. Just to have some diversification.
Yeah.
And that was it. I didn't want to give the impression I played like a lot of this game. I have 30. Look on DraftKings, I have 33% of Clarkson. I have one lineup with LeBron. You know what I mean? Like 2 lineups with Ingles. It's not like I went bananas. And I think 1 lineup with Gobert.
Yeah. For me, I'll have a little bit of Conley. I'll have some Kuzma, who I like as a lower owned. I'm going to have some Mitchell, but probably not even as much as the field. Sort of like you said, he's a great price, but there's other guys I kind of like. And he's been bad, but I'm a little worried about it. It's kind of weird to me that I'm paying more for Ja Morant and feeling more comfortable about it than Donovan Mitchell. But yeah, and then I mean that's pretty much it for me. I like Clarkson. I'm just not in love with this game from a DFS perspective. I think it's going to be slow. All right, Cheats. So we're going to get to some quick baseball stuff before we get out of here in a few minutes because some people are asking about it. So my favorite stack of the day, if the Yankees play, it would be the Yankees somewhere between the Yankees, Twins. And something like that. I know there's a crazy total at Coors. I'm going to just pick a couple pieces and probably not stack that one. Just answering Eric Johnson's question there. Jamie says he likes taking Grizz Pels, OKC Denver pieces, and some one-off. Yeah, and Simmons. That's a really good way to go, man. I like that quite a bit. Let's see. It seems like everyone's targeting the Memphis game. Everyone's talking about targeting the Memphis game, and this happens all the time in DFS. People aren't really targeting the game. Because people aren't really playing that much of New Orleans except for the really sharp guys. That's the truth. Because their prices make it look weird. And you could argue they all take away from each other. So it's kind of hard to find the right mix, which is exactly why I'm doing it. Because people are going to avoid it. Trust me. It's going to happen. All right. So quickly on baseball. Do you have any sort of overall? We're not going to get into the.
I do actually. So I want to talk about baseball. I'll do like 4 minutes on this. Is in terms of the slate. Now, again, like every slate, I want to be able to not just go chalk. I want to be able to go some chalk and some off the board with some chalk or whatever it is. So with respect to pitching, the chalk, and probably good chalk, but the chalk construction is going to be something like Garrett Cole and Montas, right? And that's going to be a really, really high owned piece. So if you do play those guys, then you have to look for non-chalky stacks. I happen to think that your Twins idea is going to be probably really popular. Mm-hmm. So in addition to, I like Twins, I like the Yankees. I mean, those are like obviously top stacks. But if you just want something to screw around with, okay, you could try a really overpriced Oakland A's stack, okay? Or if you want, you could take a shot with the Dodgers against a pretty good pitcher. The guy Paddock is a righty, so you do have that lefty power. So I guess the Dodgers and the A's would be my non-chalky, non-Rockies, Twins, San Francisco type deal. But if you wanted to go the other way, if you wanted to take like the Twins or San Francisco or the Rockies, and the Yankees, all of whom are really, really good, I think that what you can do is I think it might not be the worst idea to pivot to DeGrom off of Cole. I didn't do it last time, and look, it's certainly a much, much worse matchup for DeGrom. But again, if you want to be a little different, DeGrom certainly always has a ceiling, and I would maybe take a shot with him. And if you wanted to pivot off of Montas, you could go, and this is going to be kind of chalky also, but Carlos Rodon is not the worst in the world, or maybe Danny Duffy. So again, I wouldn't just go chalk or off the board. Just want to give you some. That's the way I was looking at it. It's a couple of different ideas of how you could kind of pair them together.
Yeah, I like it. I actually just wanted to mention I do kind of like the White Sox too as a mini stack, and I kind of like them as a full stack. Just Brett Anderson can both limit damage and the bullpen's pretty good. But at the same time, I see this White Sox team and they get a nice stadium boost by going into Milwaukee. It's kind of hard not to have some interest there. Some kind of affordable prices with Abreu and Encarnacion at first. Those guys kind of stand out to me. So I actually really like the idea of playing some White Sox. And one thing is, first of all, I don't know. You're in New York. Is this Yankees game going to play? Do you think?
Yeah, there's there's all kinds of weather issues the next couple of days out here. Something to look for, obviously.
Yeah. So if the weather is not great, one thing I would say is that you can consider playing Garrett Cole. I would consider playing bats against Garrett Cole where you're not playing him. They're incredibly cheap. They all make sense as one-offs. I would probably prioritize like a guy like Didi or something like that. Garrett Cole will let you run into one a game basically, and I would bet on Didi as being that guy. So I kind of like that. I kind of like that a little bit as well. And I agree with the Rodon. I'm using 4 pitchers right now on DraftKings for the whole slate, and it's Montas, Duffy, Rodon, and Cole.
One thing I would add to your White Sox thing, because I think I play the White Sox literally every slate.
Yeah.
What I think, and you tell me if this logic is right. I would like the White Sox in a stack because the idea is that, okay, Brett Anderson tries to limit damage, but let's say he doesn't, right? If the White Sox can get to him early, then also they don't have to, if they get 5 runs or 6 runs, they don't have to face the best of the Milwaukee bullpen. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Whereas, if they kind of just like chip away and it's hanging around or whatever, then they're going to have to deal with all that Milwaukee bullpen stuff. So I think White Sox can actually be a pretty good stack against Brett Anderson.
Yeah. I think they're interesting. I got a question about Thorpe here from Eric Johnson. I'm not going to play any Thorpe. I don't even know how many pitches this guy's going to throw. He's not even a starting pitcher. I don't know if he's ever started a game.
That's the thing. He's been popping in a lot. He was popping in a lot of projection models like overnight. I think like that. I think
it's because the run total.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think they reduced his innings down. I don't really think he's going to be. This is my opinion. It just doesn't feel like a guy who they're just going to let roll.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure you're probably right on that. I think Alec Mills and Danny Duffy are both in play in the KC Chicago game. Wind blowing in, low total. Got to keep an eye on those Chicago games, man. It's crazy. When the wind blows in, it's just nothing ever happens. I'm telling you. I remember the Cubs scored like 15 runs as a popular chalky thing on a slate, like a 3-game slate, because they were the best offense going, but they also had the wind blowing in. They scored like 15 runs, and I think they had 1 extra base hit or something like that. It was wild.
I know what I'm doing. I know exactly what I'm doing in baseball. So Frankie Montas, I think, is going to be probably as popular as Cole, if not more so. I am playing Kyle Seager. I am going to play Vogelbach if they both get in.
Sure.
And absolutely.
Yeah, Montas might be more popular than Cole because of the way the slate is shaking out in Colorado. But if you look at Colorado, like are you excited to pay up for any of these bats? Other than Brandon Belt and Evan Longoria, I don't really want to touch the bats because you get Yastrzemski or whatever out there, and he's 5,900 and all this stuff. And I just would rather play other guys. I'd rather play Nelson Cruz against the lefty. I'd rather play Aaron Judge.
Talking about the Colorado guys or San Francisco guys?
San Francisco. Well, I'd rather play the Colorado side of it because I like the line, the hitters better. But I think Cueto is better than people think and can keep people off balance a little bit. I think he'll give up a couple bombs and go like 4 innings. Probably give up like 2 or 3 runs. I don't know. There's a lot of BBP there too, by the way. So he owns. He, by the way, absolutely owns Nolan Arenado, and at the same time, Charlie Blackmon and Matt Kemp completely own him. So keep an eye if Kemp's in the lineup today.
Dude, who died and left Mike Yastrzemski at 5,900?
This is the crazy. I'm just not going to get into it.
I don't even call it
crazy, Eric. Eric, I'll tell you right now, if there's one team that I wouldn't stack, and I'm assuming the weather stays like this, so if the weather changes, don't hold me to this. But if you stack the Cubs, you hate money. If you stack the Cubs when the wind's blowing in from Wrigley, you just don't touch it. But if the wind changes, then you can go ahead and do it. But there's no way you could ever play the Cubs on a full slate when the wind's blowing in.
I mean, I don't even think Carl Yastrzemski would be 5,900. This is amazing.
It's crazy. All right, man. Well, we got to get out of here because I got to get admitted my lines before these 1:00 games. Anything else for the people before we get out of here?
Yeah. I wouldn't go crazy on the Colorado game. Like you said, San Francisco guys are really expensive, and Johnny Cueto is not that bad. So, yeah.
There we go. All right. For Sheets, I'm Bobby saying thanks so much for tuning into the QL TV show. We will be back for you tomorrow. And, we'll talk to you later.